Most Jeep owners run 32 PSI because the door sticker says so. But on many Jeeps, that pressure actually shrinks your contact patch, wears out the center of your tires, and quietly destroys thousands of miles of tread life. And that's just the beginning. Today I'm breaking down the real reasons why you should never use 32 PSI on your Jeep, and the 5-minute test that reveals your Jeep's true pressure. Reason number 1. Center wear eats your tread alive. When you pump a Jeep tire to 32 PSI, the sidewalls pull inward and the center tread bulges toward the road. That means only about 60% of your rubber actually touches the pavement at any given moment. The outer edges, the part you paid good money for, barely make contact, and the damage adds up fast. A quality set of all-terrain tires runs anywhere from $800 to $1,600, depending on brand and size. Center wear alone can shave 15,000 miles off their life, which means you just threw $400 to $800 into the garbage, all because of a few extra PSI that nobody told you to question. Yeah, that door sticker just cost you half a set of tires. But the tread wear is just the first problem, because what happens to your grip is even scarier. Reason number 2. Your contact patch shrinks and grip disappears. The contact patch is the section of rubber that touches the ground at any moment. On a properly inflated tire, that patch spreads out roughly the size of your open hand. Pump it to 32 pounds per square inch on a Jeep, and that patch tightens up because the tire becomes too rigid and too rounded to lay flat. Less rubber on the road equals less grip. Less grip in the rain, less grip on gravel, less grip when you slam the brakes at 60 miles per hour. And Jeeps already sit higher than sedans and trucks, which means the center of gravity works against you. Combine a high ride height with a shrunken contact patch, and you have a vehicle fighting itself every time you need to stop fast. And that grip problem gets 10 times worse the second you leave the pavement. Reason number 3. Off-road traction falls apart completely. Every experienced off-roader knows the first thing you do on a trail is air down. Rocks, roots, ruts, sand, and mud all require the tire to flex and wrap around the terrain to find grip. A tire at 18 PSI creates a footprint 30 to 40% larger than one at 32 pounds per square inch. And that extra contact area is the difference between crawling over an obstacle and spinning your wheels uselessly. At 32 pounds per square inch, the tire bounces off rocks instead of gripping them. It skips across sand instead of floating on it. Running 32 PSI off-road is the equivalent of wearing dress shoes on a hiking trail. You can technically do it, but you will slip, struggle, and regret every single step. But even if you never leave the highway, the next reason hits you every single day. Reason number 4. Ride quality turns absolutely brutal. Jeeps already ride firmly. The solid axle, the short wheelbase, the coil or leaf spring setup, all of it contributes to a stiff platform. And then you go ahead and overinflate the tires to 32 pounds per square inch, which removes the one cushion between the road and your spine. Every crack in the pavement, every pothole, every highway expansion joint transmits straight through that rock-hard tire and hammers your body. The tire is supposed to absorb the small stuff, so the suspension only handles the big hits. At 32 PSI, the tire stops doing its job, and everything from the road surface to your lower back pays the price. Drop to 28 or 29 PSI on the highway, and you will feel the difference in the first 5 minutes. Road noise drops, the ride smooths out, and your passengers stop asking why the Jeep rides like a broken shopping cart. And that stiff tire is not just uncomfortable, it actually breaks things, which brings us to the next reason. Reason number 5. Road hazard damage gets way worse. This sounds backwards, but a tire with more air is more vulnerable to damage, not less. An overinflated tire cannot flex when it hits a pothole at highway speed. The impact force concentrates on a tiny area of the tire and rim instead of spreading across a wider surface. That concentrated force creates sidewall bubbles, internal cord separation, and bent rims. One bad pothole on a 32 PSI tire can cause $300 to $500 in damage that a properly inflated tire at 28 PSI would have absorbed without a scratch. Think of catching an egg. A soft hand absorbs the impact and the egg survives. A stiff hand concentrates the force and the egg cracks. Your tire at 32 PSI is the stiff hand. And that same stiffness creates another problem you can actually measure with a tape measure. Reason number 6. Braking distances get dangerously long. This connects straight back to the contact patch. Less rubber gripping the road means your Jeep takes longer to stop. Even a 3 to 4 PSI difference can add several feet to your braking distance at highway speeds, and those extra feet can be the gap between stopping safely and slamming into the car ahead of you. A stock Wrangler already weighs around 4,200 pounds. Add steel bumpers, a winch, a roof rack, and recovery gear, and you push past 5,000 pounds easily. All that mass needs every bit of available tire grip to stop efficiently. Running 32 PSI with that kind of weight working against you is fighting basic physics, and physics always wins. But wait, because the real kicker is that 32 PSI was never even meant for your setup in the first place. Reason number 7. The door sticker was calibrated for a vehicle that no longer exists. That placard on your door pillar was set for the exact Jeep that rolled off the factory floor. The stock tires, the stock wheels, the stock weight, and the stock suspension were all factored into that number. The second you changed any of those variables, that recommended pressure became meaningless. Swap to 35-inch tires instead of the factory 33s, and you need different pressure. Bolt on beadlock wheels that weigh more, and the calculation changes again. Add 200 pounds of steel armor and a winch up front, and the entire equation shifts. Running 32 pounds per square inch on a modified Jeep is like following a baking recipe, but doubling the flour, and keeping everything else the same. The result will be wrong every single time, no exceptions. And the damage from that wrong pressure goes deeper than the tread, literally into the tire itself. Reason number 8. Sidewall stress builds in all the wrong places. A properly inflated tire flexes evenly across the entire sidewall. The load distributes uniformly, and the internal structure handles the stress without any hot spots. At 32 pounds per square inch on a Jeep that actually needs lower pressure, that even flex goes away. Instead, you get stress concentration points where the rigid sidewall meets the road at sharp angles. Those hot spots fatigue the internal cords month after month without any visible warning sign. And when a sidewall finally fails at highway speed, the blowout happens fast and violently. On a vehicle with a high center of gravity, a sudden blowout at 70 miles per hour can trigger a rollover if you do not react perfectly within the first second. That alone should make you rethink the number on your gauge. Now, some people will argue that higher pressure at least saves gas, and that argument falls apart the second you do the math. Reason number 9. The fuel savings myth that costs you hundreds. Yes, overinflating tires reduces rolling resistance by a tiny margin. That part is technically true. But on a Jeep that already averages 17 to 22 miles per gallon depending on setup, the savings from running 32 pounds per square inch instead of 28 pounds per square inch amount to roughly 0.2 miles per gallon. That translates to about $15 to $20 saved per year in gas. Meanwhile, the accelerated center wear from that same overinflation chews through $400 to $800 worth of tire life. You are saving pocket change while burning through real money. The math crushes this argument no matter which way you run the numbers. You know what saves more gas than overinflating your tires? Slowing down by 5 miles per hour on the highway. And that one actually works without destroying anything. But fuel economy is a comfort concern. The next reason is a safety concern, and it shows up every time it rains. Reason number 10. Hydroplaning risk jumps up in wet conditions. Tread grooves exist to channel water out from under the contact patch so rubber can grip the road surface. Those grooves only function properly when the full tread width contacts the pavement. At 32 pounds per square inch, the center of the tire presses down while the outer grooves lift slightly, and water cannot evacuate efficiently through that narrow footprint. The result is that hydroplaning kicks in at lower speeds than it should. A properly inflated tire at 28 psi might hold grip at 55 miles per hour in heavy rain. That same tire at 32 psi can start losing traction at 48 or 50. A 7 mile per hour gap between grip and hydroplaning does not sound like much until you are the one sliding toward a guardrail with no control over the vehicle. And while the tires are failing in the rain, the parts behind them are taking a beating too. Reason number 11. Your suspension wears out faster than it should. Tires and suspension are designed to work as a team. The tire absorbs small bumps, anything under about half an inch. The suspension handles everything bigger. When the tire is too stiff at 32 psi, it stops absorbing those small hits, and the suspension has to pick up the slack for everything. That extra workload accelerates wear on shocks, bushings, track bar joints, ball joints, and control arm mounts. Over thousands of miles, the damage compounds. Quality shocks cost $300 to $600 to replace. Ball joints run $150 to $300 per side with labor. You end up spending serious money on suspension repairs that could have been prevented by simply running the right tire pressure. All of that wear, all of that cost, and it traces back to a few extra PSI that your tires never needed. So, after all 12 reasons, you are probably wondering what pressure you should actually run. And there is a 5-minute test that gives you the exact answer. Reason number 12. The 5-minute chalk test gives you the real number. Grab a piece of chalk and draw a thick line across the full width of your tire tread, edge to edge. Drive forward about 50 feet in a straight line on flat pavement. Stop and check the chalk. If the center wore off but the edges still show chalk, your pressure is too high. That is exactly what 32 PSI does on the majority of Jeep setups. If the edges wore off but the center still shows, pressure is too low. If the chalk wore evenly across the entire width, you found your sweet spot. Most Jeep owners who actually run this test with stock or slightly oversized tires land somewhere between 26 and 30 PSI, not 32. The test takes 5 minutes, costs nothing, and it tells you more than any door sticker ever will. For stock Jeeps on the highway, start at 30 PSI and chalk test from there. For 33 to 35-inch tires, try 28 to 30 PSI. Off-road, air down to 18 to 22 PSI for rocks and 15 to 18 for sand. And invest in a quality digital gauge because the cheap pencil ones from gas stations can read 3 to 5 PSI off, which defeats the entire purpose. 12 reasons, one simple fix. Do the chalk test this weekend, dial in your real number, and hit subscribe so you stop making mistakes that cost you tires and money. See you next time, and if you want to go the extra mile, I made a full Jeep longevity ebook that includes all our most valuable maintenance tips. Click on the link in the description below if you want it. See you next time!